Legend of Total War here, and today we're covering another Total War mod review. This time we're doing Europa Barbarorum, which was the top rated comment in the previous mod review, which is an overhaul mod for Rome Total War. Now, when calling this an overhaul mod, that's kind of an understatement. Almost every aspect of Rome Total War has been modified with this mod. It's probably one of the biggest overhaul mods I've ever played. And in terms of my playtime and experiences with Europa Barbarorum, it's the first mod that I ever download, and it's probably the mod that I've spent the most amount of hours on. I can remember when I was, obsessed with Rome Total War back in the day, and I found out about Europa Barbarorum. It just extended my playtime on Rome Total War by probably about 1,000 hours, and I was able to spend, an entire month on some campaigns. Anyway, let's go through, and I'll let you know what some of the differences are between this and vanilla, because to go through all the differences, I simply wouldn't have enough time. Unless you want a 5-hour long video, I'd rather keep it to 10 to 15 minutes long, personally. Anyway, so just like with Stainless Steel 6.4, Europa Barbarorum attempts to push the Rome Total War engine as far as it can go, giving you access to as many factions as you can. The engine is limited in terms of how many factions you can have, so don't expect it to be Rome 2-esque where it's going to have 100 different playable factions. It's just not possible with the Total War 2 engine, but it does the best it can to split some of the more clumped together factions to give them a bit more historical accuracy. In addition to that as well, making the map as large as possible. You can see they've extended the map by probably about 40% more territory. If we have a look, the Rome Total War map probably ended about here. So all of this territory here is sort of additional what they've added to the mod. In addition to that as well, there are 199 settlements, just like with Stainless Steel 6.4. But one of the settlements isn't actually conquerable because there's a whole bunch of scripts associated with it. You can conquer it via cheats, but in a regular campaign you wouldn't ever go there. It's not possible to reach there by foot, and it's down here. Anyway, going through the factions, so there are some major changes. There's some factions that aren't in the campaign, and there's some new ones. So if we have a look here, we got Seleucia, so that's the Seleucid Empire. You got Bactria, that's a new one. Armenia, which is called Hayasdan, which is its more historically accurate name. You've got the Saba, which is, I think, a replacement for Numidia. Numidia isn't in this campaign. They've stripped it completely, which I think is a bit more historically accurate because Numidia wasn't formed until the 1st century BC, I think. And although there were other sort of pre-Numidian factions like the Messaceli, I think Carthage sort of covers that enough. So they've got an Arab tribe in here instead. So you've got Macedonia. You've got the Carthaginian Republic, or whatever it is. You've got the Romans. So the Romans are no longer 4 separate factions. It's no longer split between the Julii, Scipii, Brutii, and the SBQR. It's all put into one faction now. So there is no Senate mechanic with the Romans this time. But the characters that you have, the generals you have, all have different allegiances. So you'll have a character that might be a pleb, or a character that might be a patrician, for an example, and that has different effects on the campaign map. So you got Pontus, Parthia, well, it's called Parlava. I'm just going to call them by their EB names and their vanilla names. You've got the Sakarauka, which is a Scythian, Indo-Turkic, steppe people. You got the Aedui. So instead of just being called Gaul, the Gallic tribes have been split up into 2 distinct entities. You've got the Aedui and the Arverni. Obviously, again, to reiterate, the engine is limited when it comes to number of factions. You're not going to get the Nervii and all those other different Gallic factions because the engine just can't sustain that many playable factions. You got the Suebos here, which is a replacement for Germania. You got the Casse, a replacement for the Britons. The Sauromatai, which is a replacement for Scythia. You got the Getae, replacement for Dacia. You got the Hellenes, which is the Greek states, but it has been split up a little bit more. Again, you can't have... there isn't enough room in the game for Sparta, Athens, Rhodes, all those different factions. You can't have that. You've got the Ptolemoi, so that's Egypt, but it's far more historically accurate. You're not going to get the Bronze Age, style troop set that you've got in vanilla. Instead, it's going to be much more historically accurate. This game is full of Hellenization. Most of the units you'll come up against, east of this position here, are just going to be pikes and just Greek units all the way across because of Alexander's conquests. You've got the Averni, we already touched on that. You've got the Lusitonen, which is a replacement for Spain, and then you've got Epirus, which is another Hellenistic faction that's been added to it. It's done its best to put in the most influential factions that were around at the time, with the limitations that this engine has. So the only faction that I can recall that isn't in the game at this point is Numidia. It's really just a replacement for Saba. Again, the engine is limited. You can't have any more factions than this, I think. Anyway, let's jump into the campaign map now. I'll jump in as the Romans, and I'll showcase what the campaign looks like. Okay, so here we are on the campaign map. Turned off the fog of war so we can see everything. And you see the Romans start off with a bit less territory than they did in vanilla, much more aligned with what they were historically. And the territories, there's a lot more regions even in the territories that were in vanilla. Where I think there was like 5 or 6 regions in Iberia in vanilla. There's a lot more now. You've got Britannia, you've got Germania. I don't want to go over everything. And it goes all the way out into the edge of India here. So it's got it includes Persia, Afghanistan, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of extra territories. There's some impassable territory here that you can't get to, and the actual region that you can't conquer is this one here. There's a bunch of scripts I think that play out there. Now, as I said before, this game, this mod changes everything about Rome Total War pretty much. Even the music has changed. There's no vanilla music in Europa Barbarorum, and to be honest, that's probably one of the things I would criticize about it. Rome Total War had one of the best soundtracks in a Total War game, and this mod discarded it, and I think went for a more historically authentic soundtrack. And in my opinion, some of it's very jarring. I would often turn off the music throughout Europa Barbarorum. I think that some people do love the music for EB, but me personally, there's very few soundtracks that I actually enjoy listening to it, especially the battle music. Some of it's incredibly annoying to be. It's probably one of the things I would criticize most about Europa Barbarorum is actually the choice of soundtracks. I know that they tried to be historically accurate as possible, but again, I do prefer the vanilla music. It is just a lot. It's a lot more. Just feels a lot more action packed. I mean, you can't go wrong with Jeff Van Dyke, can you? Anyway, so what else does it change? Now, the way that you manage your settlements. That's probably one of the biggest changes made in Europa Barbarorum. It's not simply a case of you just keep building and building and building and that's just until you've got nothing left to build. In this, at the beginning of any campaign, whenever you load the game even, you gotta remember to do this, you have to turn on the campaign script. Okay, which you do by clicking on the structure and then pressing this button. You gotta do it. If you don't do it, your game's gonna have problems, so make sure you do that. What that'll do is switch it from being 2 turns per year to 4 turns per year. So it does slow down the game a lot. There's a lot of turns in this game. So, 1 turn for each season, the characters will only age 1 turn per year. So you get not 1 turn per year, will age 1 year every 4 turns. So you get a long life out of your characters in this. It's a very slow campaign. If you wanted a mod where you could just like play it in a couple of afternoons and finish it, this is not the mod for you. If you wanna conquer the known world as the Romans, you gotta set aside a good month to get it done. Because it takes a long time. The battles are really slow paced. There's a lot more troops you got to kill. A lot of these guys will leave a lot bigger garrisons. The rebel settlements, some of them have scripts and they'll spawn full armies. Like these guys out here, for example, they'll spawn a full army, and if you kill that army, it'll spawn back very quickly until you've actually captured it. So there's a lot of campaign scripts like that. That's their way of sort of creating the independent barbarian tribes that were out here. Not all of them do have that, but I do remember this one here having it specifically. And it was that settlement there I remember being a massive pain in the ass to conquer, just because I'd have to send such a huge force to go and get it. And there's various other ones like that will do it. And of course the AI will capture them, and if the AI captures them, then you don't have to worry about it, then you just capture it from the AI. But there are a lot of campaign scripts. Now, in addition to the campaign scripts, there's one thing that you really do need to know about in terms of government in this. They really tried to make government a much bigger role in Rome Total War than in vanilla. Now, there's 4 types of governments, and it's based on a building, which is right here. Does it show up in the building browser? Let me just check. No, it doesn't really show up in the building browser. Okay, so basically, you can see here it's got the number 1 basically with it. There's 4 different government types. There's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so starting at number 1, these are your homeland territories. These are the territories which, historically speaking, your culture had its origins in. So for the Romans, it's basically all of Italy. Outside of Italy, you can't build this government building. Okay, you'll be able to build type 2 governments, which basically is a Romanized provinces. Now these are provinces that have almost the same levels of development or potential development as your Italian settlements. You can build most of your buildings. There'll be a couple that you won't be able to build, and most of your recruitment will be available from these settlements. Now, going beyond that, there'll be the regions that you can only build at type 3 and type 4. So these are regions where it's, historically speaking, the Romans never got to. And every faction has this as well. It's not like if you conquered this territory as the Seleucids, you can build this level 1 government here. No, the level 1 government for the Seleucids are stuck to their home territories. And each faction has their sort of conquest paths mapped out, so it's going to be different. I'm just focusing on the Romans now as an example. So for example, the Romans, if you conquered Avaricum as an example, you won't be able to build a type 1 government, but you will be able to establish a type 2 government, allowing for most of your buildings because Romans did have it. But if you were to conquer, say, out to here, now I'm pretty sure out here you can't build a type 2 government. You can build a type 3 or type 4. Now, a type 3 government is supposed to represent like a frontier fringe colony sort of area. It is part of your empire. You can build you can build some of your buildings. Like, you won't be able to build like the aqueducts. You won't be able to build any of your main recruitment buildings. So maintaining public order around these regions can be quite difficult, but it's still considered part of your empire. And then there's type 4. Now there's no cutoff for type 3 and type 4. Type 3 and type 4 can be built anywhere. I mean, if you really wanted to, you can build a type 4 here, but a type 3 and type 4 does have limitations. Now, with the type 4, it's considered actually a client state, like a vassal, not actually part of your empire. Now, when you create a type 4 government, what it will do is generate a general that will govern the region for you and give it a massive public order boost, but that general won't be able to leave the area, allowing you to, when you're out here, and these public order areas would be terrible to maintain, you build a type 4 government, a general comes in, sort of like a puppet, and looks after it for you. You won't make much money from these areas, but at least it'll hold on to the region for you, and you'll be able to recruit the local troops. Now, area of recruitment is a big deal in this. You can't recruit every troop everywhere like you can in vanilla. Now, this is during the time at the moment of the Camillian army reform, so we'll just use this as an example. So taking the Triarii as an example, this unit can only be recruited in a type 1 government area. Now, even if you capture somebody else's type 1 territory, and this is sort of like an unintended consequence of the game, if you do conquer somebody else's type 1 territory, you can still utilize it. However, you still won't be able to utilize it to its full potential, in that you won't be able to get your best units, your Triarii, or for Marian reforms, your legionaries, because it's just every unit is based on an area of recruitment. You can't recruit everything everywhere. But when you get out here, you'll be able to build a building like this. So in Italy, building this here, you barely get any access to it because you mostly rely on your local troops. But going out further out this way, you'll be able to get local troops. And I've already rambled on way longer than I expected I would about this. Like I said, this mod has so much depth to it. Rome Total War is an amazing game, and this mod here pushes it to its absolute maximum. Okay, so I don't, like I said, I don't want to go too much on it to explain everything about the mod, but I think you sort of get the gist that if you want to play a campaign of this, you're gonna sink in a lot of hours because there's just so much more to do, and there's more buildings and stuff as well. There's so many different units as well. On top of that, it's way more than on vanilla. Anyway, let's jump into a quick custom battle, and I'll show you how the pacing of the battle goes. Now, unfortunately, in the custom battle section, I don't know why this is, but like none of your factional troops are actually available as Rome. So I'm looking here, looking for like Roman troops, and it's all just like the local troops that you can hire. So I don't know why exactly that is. So I'm just gonna have to choose from units in here. Just to give you guys an idea of the pacing. I only want it to be a very quick battle, but I'm going to do a Rome versus the Idui. And again, this is what their faction roster is. So I'll give you just a quick battle to showcase what the pacing's like. Okay, so I've got myself a half stack here. Even though I'm playing as Rome, like I said before, there was no access to Roman troops. It's a sort of similar situation with Gaul. They do have some of their factional troops. Now, one of the things that I did mention is that the battle pacing slows down quite a lot. You can't just kill the enemy general and just charge into them and rout the whole thing. That's just not going to work. Or even just charge into them. Sometimes you don't even need to kill the enemy general. Cavalry has a lot less of an impact in Europa Barbarorum, so that really does slow down the campaign quite a lot, slow down the battles quite a lot. I've had battles that will last up to an hour, or even more than that. So I'd highly recommend people, if you're going to play this mod, turn off the battle timer, because if you're in the middle of if you're fighting a siege and you've only given 45 minutes and it's got a full stack in there, you will not be able to defeat it in time unless you are just like the fastest fucking runner in the world. And at that point there, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage in terms of getting the full experience out of the game, because the battles are long. So their army over here is more or less the same as ours. They've got some archers, we got some slingers, and they've got some good troops and some trash troops and 2 units of cavalry. Their army is the same size, bouncer power wise it's the same. So we'll see how we go. The slingers have a much higher range in this than they do in vanilla, and we'll just let them do their thing. Speed things up a bit, just having a bit of a skirmish. They're coming towards us. Now, of course, the mod doesn't particularly change the AI behavior in battle. They're still pretty much going to do the same thing they always do. Come on, get back here. Oh, they defaulted to loose formation. So we got some really basic hoplites here. See how they handle a charge. You'll notice that in vanilla, if a unit charges into them, you lose like half your men straight away. These guys here, they lost a handful, and they're just basic troops there, basic spearmen. When you're dealing with later in the campaign with much higher tier levels of cavalry, higher tier levels of phalanxes, they can hold the line for a really long time. So as I said, the music is changed. Some of the tracks are alright, but I personally prefer vanilla soundtracks. That's just a personal preference of mine. Also, the battle difficulty on this is just normal difficulty. Again, I'm not trying to boast about how good I am. We're just trying to get an idea of like the pacing for the battle. If this was vanilla, I would have already won the battle by now. It would already be over. So those are just basic troops there, but their more elite troops will hold on for quite a lot longer. I kind of did expect them to hold out a little bit longer than did this, though. From my memory, even their basic troops will hold on for a really long time. But then again, I'm used to playing on very hard difficulty on the campaign map and well, on the battles, and they do get absurd levels of bonuses from that. And custom battles is difficult to judge it on sometimes. But you can see here though they've changed the way every single unit looks. There's no units that have a vanilla look. And they also removed this sort of annoying advisor as well. He doesn't speak during these battles at all. Alright, well this battle's pretty much over. Speed this up, let's get over with. Alright, well let's just finish up the battle and I'll give an overview. Suppose these mod reviews will be more like 20 minutes, not necessarily 10 to 15 minutes. It's very hard to cover everything, I think, adequately in 10 to 15 minutes. Alright, that'll do. Alright, cool. Man, heroic victory, how about that? Okay, so, overall, what do I think of the mod? I think this is one of the best mods ever created. Now, it's a bit of a meme on my channel that I refuse to play Europa Barbarorum again, and that's because I did a Seleucia campaign, and it lasted 195 episodes. It was so damn long. And the thing is, I don't like using pikes, and it's a pike-related faction. Personally, when I prefer to play these sort of games, I personally prefer to play as Rome. That's a faction that really speaks to me. And of course it doesn't have any availability for Pike, so I thoroughly enjoy playing as Rome. So it's a bit of a meme on my channel that that some people might think that I actually don't like Europa Barbarorum, and it's not actually the case. I love this mod, but the problem is I just don't have time to like do a long let's play of it these days. In the way that YouTube works these days, people have very short attention spans, and an 195 episode campaign is just it's just career suicide. But overall, I think this is an amazing campaign. They've done the absolute best they could, given the limitations with the engine. The only criticism I really have towards this is just that the battles on the campaign map, you know, especially in the higher tier units, do take a very long time, and that I personally would prefer the vanilla music to be reinserted as opposed to the music that's in here, or even in addition to what's here, because I do get very sick of the music tracks in this game, and the soundtrack does make a big difference. Part of the things that makes Medieval 2 and Rome 1 so enjoyable is the fact of having a very high energy, easy to listen to soundtrack, as opposed to, say, Rome 2's droning music, which why a lot of people choose to mod back in the Rome 1 music. Overall, I'd probably give this mod a 9.5 out of 10, because I personally have sunk so many hours into this, and I can really appreciate what they did with it. Anyway, if there's a mod that you want me to cover, again, post it in the comments. The top rated comment is what I'll cover next. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, fuckers.